Today, 11-1 is talking about sequences and very particular types of sequences. They are arithmetic. Okay. Basically, that means we are going to add from term to term. But first, let's talk about what a sequence is. It's just a list of numbers in a particular order. Okay, so basically there should be some pattern from one term to the next, and that's all a sequence has to be. Each number in there is called a term. Okay, so some sequences I might stop at 4 terms, and some might go on indefinitely. And an arithmetic sequence is basically you have to add by a certain value each time. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. So for this one, find the next 4 terms in each arithmetic sequence. The first thing you want to find is what is going to be called D. It's called D because it's the difference between one term to the next. So in this problem, how do you get from, say, the first term to the second term? Subtract 5. Do you subtract 5 again? Does the pattern continue? Yes. So this is arithmetic, and D is -5. Now the notation is what gets some people. It's not really the work inside it, it's the notation. This could be called an A is used a lot. A sub 1, meaning the first term. A sub 2, second term. A sub 3, you get the idea. So if I want the next 4 terms, I basically want you to find A sub 4, A sub 5, A sub 6, and A sub 7 is really what I want you to find. It's just a notation. So what is A sub 4, otherwise known as the 4th term for this sequence? I heard 11, is that correct? Yes. And then the 5th term is? Followed by? Now, last chapter when we did logarithms, we said no to negatives, right? Inside there. Is -4 okay here? Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. You can do that. They can go negative. It's not the end of the world. Letter B is a little bit more complicated because of what D is. Right now, it's, well, just a fraction for 1/2, and then it's a mixed number. I think mixed numbers is probably the hardest way to look at those. Probably the next hardest would be as decimals. The easiest way is as an improper fraction. So yeah, we've got 1/2 as our first term. And then how do you do that? Well, you take 8 times 1 is 8. You add 1, and you get, so 9/8 is actually the second term. So what is the third term that we already have? 7/4, I heard. Now it might once again still be very difficult to figure out what D is. Now let's face it, in the first example here, A, going down by 5, that was quite simple to find. But what you could have done in this one is just taken term 2 and subtracted term 1. That would have told you what the difference was, right? And you can do the same thing here. We're going to to find out the difference, take basically any of the terms and subtract the term before it. So we're going to take 9/8 and subtract 1/2. Well, that's not very easy because when subtracting or adding, you need a common denominator. So we're going to rewrite 1/2. It still has to mean 1/2 though. But which way am I going to write 1/2 for this one? 4/8. It's still a half. We've just changed its appearance, not its value. I say that a lot. So it's 9/8 minus 4/8. So the difference is 5/8. Very good. I wanted to see if anybody tried to subtract the denominator there. So the difference is 5/8. So then let's go ahead and find the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th term. So we got to take 7/4, and you can do that work wherever you want. You got to take 7/4 and subtract 5/8. Well, once again, that's kind of a problem, isn't it? Or am I subtracting 5/8 or adding 5/8? Very good, add. Nobody said anything, so I figured I better save you there. So is that easy to add that? Well, of course, if you got your calculator, you're just sitting there using that fraction button. But if you had to do it yourself, how are you going to write it? You don't want 7/4, you're going to want 14/8. Okay, if I add that, I get 19/8. Do you think I'm going to let you leave it as 19/8? Sure, go ahead. That doesn't bother me. Because let's face it, it's easier to look at these as improper fractions anyways. Is it okay to switch it back over? Go for it if you want to. Just make sure you simplify it as much as you can. So now the reason I would not simplify is I can just keep adding this fraction now, and I already have my common denominator as I go. So let's add 5/8. And you get 24/8. Now I'm not going to let you leave that one. Okay, but let's leave it like that for now so that I can keep adding 5/8. That'd be 29/8, right? You see how that's helpful to just leave it that way? And then we would get 34/8. Now, of those 4 terms that we just did, I would let you leave 2 of them. But there are 2 of them that you better do something with at least. And I think one of them obviously is this 24/8 right here. 24/8 is just flat out 3. Okay, so you should probably write it that way. And this last one, at least simplify. You don't have to necessarily go to a mixed number or anything, but at least simplify it for me. So what number comes out of both of those at least? Does a 4 come out of both? I think just a 2, isn't it? Because that becomes what? 17/4? Is that okay, 17/4? Yeah, leave it that way. That's fine with me. Or maybe you like 4 1/4. If you want to write it that way, that's because it goes in there 4 times without going over, right? And 1 left over. So 4 1/4. So there you go. What I would like you to do right now is try the next couple on your own. All right, let's take a look. Well, for letter C, D is 6, -6. It's +6. Again, if you ever get stuck, take a term and subtract the one before it, and it'll give you the answer. So our next couple of blanks is kind of how I look at it. If you want to, it would kind of be a sub 4, 5, 6, and whatnot. But the next term is then 52 followed by 58 followed by 64. Okay. And D for this one. -5. So you go 47, 42, 37, 32. 5s are nice, and so are 10s, obviously. But I also think that in these 4 examples, after you saw them again, you probably could have done most of those in 8th grade, except for maybe letter B with the 5/8 might have caused you some trouble. But for the most part, you probably could have done that. But what if I give you something similar and I say, well, the first term was 34, kind of like letter C. I told you the difference was 6. And instead of only asking you for the 7th term, I asked you for the 100th term. I don't think many of you are going to want to sit out there and write them all out all the way to 100. Okay, you're probably not going to want to do that. And so there's a formula that's going to help us do that. Or I could tell you that somewhere down the line, 170 is one of the terms. Which term is it? Okay, I could ask you it both ways. And this formula right here will help you solve that. The notation is what causes the most difficulty for most people. This right here is one of the terms in the sequence. And as it's happened before, that uncomfortable silence for those of you listening to this recording is because people were not being quiet. So a sub n is a particular term along the way. Maybe it's the 10th term, maybe it's the 7th term, maybe it's the 100th term, who knows, but it's one of the terms. A sub 1 is quite simply the first term. N is which number do you want? Do you want the 100th term? Well, then you're going to make n 100. Do you want the 7th term? Then make n 7. D you should already know. D basically stands for difference, and that's why I made you find it in those last 4 examples so that you knew what it was. Right? Otherwise, you would look at the formula and it would seem very strange. Okay? But that's what the D stands for. And again, I think notation is what gets more people than the formula itself, and this is just a -1 on the inside is all that is. So let's try one. It says the number 89 is which term? So 89 is one of the terms. It starts 2, 5, 8, and then keeps going. So do you think 89 is going to be in the next couple? Should we just write out the next couple? I don't think 89 is going to happen for a while. So where does 89 fit in as far as the formula? Whoop, that's not an equals. I'll fix that. So let's say the number 89 is actually one of the terms. Do we know which term along the way? Do you think it's maybe the 5th term? Probably not. Maybe the 20th term? Maybe. So a sub n in this particular one is one of the terms out there, and it's the term I want to know how far out it is. So that's what takes the place of 89. I'm not asking for the 89th term. I'm telling you 89 is one of the terms. Well, what's a sub 1 based on the way that we see this particular sequence? A sub 1's 2. Yeah, it's just sitting right there. It's the first term. Plus, do I know n? I don't know which term it is. Minus 1. Do I know d? Well, it's not given, but we can figure out d pretty easy. It's 3. You just figure out the difference there. You have a lot of options here. Many ways you could do the algebra. What I'm looking at is the 2. I would probably get rid of that first. And how are we going to get rid of that? Yeah, subtract 2 from both sides. And I'll move it up here. We got 87 then equals n minus 1 times 3. You have a choice now. You can either divide both sides by 3 or you can distribute the 3. Distribute? All right, let's do it that way then. So what do we got? 3n minus, be careful, 3 is 87. So then I would add the 3 probably is your best idea. So 90 equals 3n. Divide by 3, so n is 30. Now it's very important for me that, yeah, you can solve it, but it's also important for me that you can explain what that means. Great, n is 30, you did the algebra, real good. What that means is what? Does anybody think they can explain that? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. 89 is the 30th number in this sequence. If I went out to the 30th term, it would be 89. Okay. So now, do you notice the difference in the next question? It says, what is the 100th term, although the word term is missing. What is the 100th term in the sequence? Again, is that one of them you're going to want to write them all out? No, but you have to make that choice. Maybe in some problems it is easy just to write out to say the 5th term. But this is asking for the 100th term. Okay? So again, in the formula, if we look up here, well, do I know a sub n? No, I'm looking for that term. Now, some people write a sub 100. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. That's totally up to you. Some people like to just see a sub n and be done with it. Okay, but n is really 100 in this problem. So a sub 1 for this problem is 7 plus n is 100 minus 1. And what is the difference? 6. So again, a sub 100 over here just basically means what's the 100th term is all that means. Because a sub 1 is the first, a sub 2 is the second. You get the idea. So the 100th term is, well, what should we probably do first? I'm thinking we should probably take 100 minus 1 is 99. So we're going to get 7 plus 99 times 6. Does it matter what order I do things at that step? It does a little bit. You better do multiplication before you do addition, correct? I think most of you are so well versed in that, that's what you're going to do anyway. So it's 7 plus, well, what is 99 times 6? 594, thank you. So what is the 100th term? A sub 100 for this one is 601. So do I do anything with this 100 that's sitting down below here? Do I try and multiply it up or anything like that? No, that's just subscript. That means that the 100th term in this sequence is 601. Once again, I don't think you're going to want to sit there and actually add that up. Any questions on those? Have you figured out why it's n minus 1 in the formula? Why not just n? Why is it n minus 1? Just because I felt like writing n minus 1 seemed like a good idea?
You want add the last one, because the 100th you can.
Really what it is we already know the first term. Yes. So I don't want to add the difference 100 times to get there. I only want to add the difference 99 times, which is why this one was only 90, because I already know the first one. I only actually want to add 99 times, not 100. If I add 100 times, I actually have the 100 in first term. And that's why it's n minus 1. Arithmetic mean. This is actually the words that you've seen before, but this one is slightly different. It's basically saying I've got 12 sitting right here, and there are 6 arithmetic means in between. So basically, I look at it as having 6 blanks in there, and then you got to get to 47. And it is arithmetic, so I know I have to add by the same thing every time to get there. It really depends on how you want to do this particular problem. But what I want to know is basically the difference, right? If I knew the difference, I could fill these in pretty easy. So what I would look at is, I know some people in Algebra 2 have tried to, just remember how to do these, and that might work for you. But then when we get to geometric mean, then some people get really messed up. So what I would consider is, this is the first term, right? So this would be a sub 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, a sub 8, is it, right? So it all depends on how, you want to kind of look at the problem. So some people, again, have different strategies, but you could kind of fill in the information. Well, what's a sub n? Well, a sub n is as far out as we know, and the furthest out we know is 47, right? So 47 is the 8th term. We know that. Do we know the first term? Well, and according to this one, based on how we're setting it up, the n that I know is 8 minus 1. Well, look at the only thing missing from that formula, d. And if I knew d, I could fill these in. And so what we have to do then is just take care of the math. Many people look at it differently, but let's subtract the 12 is normally what I like to do first. And so what do we got there? 35 equals 7d. And d is then, does d have to be a nice whole number like that? No. Okay, it's nice when it is, right? And I told you, you're going to like 5s. They work out fairly nice. So then what's the second term? 17, followed by 22, 27. I think you're probably getting used to the whole 5s there. Let's see if it works. 42, and if I did 5 again, would I get 47? I would. So these right here are the 6 arithmetic means, basically between 12 and 47. You can apply the same situation to letter B, which I'd like you to try right now. Well, let's see what you came up with. Now, I did it this way to see, if you would just try guess and check or something like that. Obviously, guess and check, if it's a nice number for your difference, will work. But here's kind of how I look at the problem. Yes, we have this term sitting out there, but let's just do that one last. Let's pretend that one's not even there for right now, which makes this the first term. Then that's the second, third, fourth. That would be the 5th term, right? So again, we'll just kind of forget about that first one for now. We'll come back to it later. Right? And then you might wonder, is that legal? Well, yeah, I'm just saying we're going to come back there. We'll deal with it a little bit later. And so now we can say the nth term is -7. The first term is 17. N is what, 5? Minus 1. Still don't know D. All right. Would we expect D to be positive or negative based on the numbers you see there? Yeah, more than likely negative, just based on the numbers you see. And again, I kind of like to get rid of these first. I'm not sure why I do that. But. So what do we got there? -24 equals 4D. Divide by 4. D is -6, apparently. So if that's 17 to get to the next term, or the second term according to what we have, you have to subtract 6, correct? And so what do you got? 11, 5. Do it again is -1. If we do it again, do we get -7? And I think it's quite simple to figure out what to do to get back to this term out here. Some people would refer to that as a sub 0, or some people just say, well, let's just find that term out in front. Well, instead of subtracting the 6, you're kind of going the other way, so you would just add the 6, and it would be 23. Any questions?